I'm going to call this meeting of the Lake Mill City Council to order for October 17th, 2023. Ms. T, can you call the roll, please?
Ms. Curler?
Here.
Mrs. Bishop?
Here.
Ms. Quidno?
Here.
Mr. Fields?
Here.
And Mr. Waters previously informed staff that he'd be unavailable for this evening's meeting.
Okay, thank you. Please rise with me and do the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, item agenda number 4 is Councilmember board reports and acceptance of meeting minutes. So we have City Council meeting minutes from October 3rd and October 5th, and the Public Works Board minutes from August 8th. Did anyone have any questions or corrections for any of those minutes? No? Okay, if not, we'll accept those into the record then. Move on to correspondence. Mr. Fields, would you like to start us off?
Yes, I received one call on the Rock Lake levels. It was a fellow resident. We were just doing some brainstorming and throwing some ideas around. Had an email on the trees on Milton and College Street, voicing their concern about the loss of trees. And then I also had one email on the comprehensive plan, thanking of us for including the moving forward with the school system and trying to get a community center involvement here.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Quidno.
I had much of the same. There were a few extras. I didn't get any phone calls, but a Milton Street email, as well as the correspondence from a constituent enjoying the fact that they're feeling more heard, which is awesome. And also an email regarding the ad hoc committee.
Thank you. Mrs. Bishop.
Yes, I had an email about the community center policy and some clarifications on that. I had an email in support of the current comprehensive plan draft before us. I had an email with questions about the Rock Lake water levels, which I spoke to that person and I got permission to forward it to the rest of the council members, so I will do that tomorrow. And I have an email about the Milton Street reconstruction and trees.
Thank you. I think we all received the email regarding Milton Street and the survey work that's going on there right now. I received an invitation to meet for further conversations about Rock Lake water levels. I was copied on some correspondence about possible use of test water from the liquid nitrogen tank in Ixonia for refilling Rock Lake, which sounded like that was going to be kind of a drop in the bucket, but it's a creative idea. And I attended the Joint Rock Lake Committee meeting last week. Okay, next item on our agenda is question and public comment. The public is encouraged to address the council at this time regarding items on the agenda. Public comments may also be made at this time for items that are not on the agenda if you've registered with the city clerk before the meeting has been called to order. The state's open meeting law discourages actions by the council on items that are not listed on the agenda. Please keep your comments limited to 3 minutes. State your name and address when starting your comments and fill out the sign-in sheet that we have at the podium. For anyone that's attending online, please type your name and address in the chat feature. So is there anyone that has questions or public comment for the council this evening? Okay, I don't see anyone online other than Mrs. Bishop and our clerk. I'll ask one more time, any public comment this evening? Okay, if not, we will close the public comment period and we'll go on to item 7, which is the city manager's report.
There's a number of documents included in your packet that we can answer questions on if there are any. The only other item I would mention is I know several council members received an email regarding trees on Milton Street. The paint that is on the trees is not designating them for removal. It's simply the surveyor tracking his work as he surveys the road for a future design. The road has not been designed, so there is no information on any consideration of what does or does not need to happen on that road right now. So, any tree that's marked with paint does not mean that that tree is being imminently removed, just to allay any concerns. Other than that, if there's any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Thank you. Any questions for Drake? Okay, thank you very much. We'll move on to item 8, which is council business, and our first is letter A, selection and appointment of members to the Advisory Committee on Urban Forest Management. So this was a committee that we created 2 meetings ago, and there's been an application process open, and so Drake, you can fill us in on where things are at.
So we currently have 3 applications. The resolution created a 5-member committee. So we have 3. I have them with me tonight, and I could email Ms. Bishop as well if you'd like to review those tonight. I've been told by a resident that 2 more may be interested, but we haven't received their applications yet. One is currently out of the country, and the other was putting together their application materials, but we haven't received them yet. So I can hand out the applications and send them, or if the council prefers, we can wait until the next meeting to hopefully review the comprehensive list of applicants that we will likely have.
Do council members have any preferences?
I guess I'd like to get the whole group that we're looking at one time. It'd probably be easier.
Mrs. Bishop, any thoughts?
I agree with Mr. Fields. I'd like to see all the applicants together if possible and give people more chances if they get one more meeting to maybe apply.
I would concur with that, and I think I've seen some Facebook and email traffic indicating that people are promoting the opportunity, so there may be in a couple of weeks, there will be more applications for us to consider.
Okay.
Okay, so we'll put that off. We'll revisit this topic at our next meeting. Thank you. Okay, so our next item is letter B, a presentation from Garver Events LLC, Sandy Beach Restaurant Proposal. So I'll invite the folks from Garver Events LLC to come up to the podium and speak with us.
Hello, thank you for having us. All right, my name is Bethany Ravitch. I am one of the 3 operating partners of Garver Events. These are my partners, Dan Smith and Tia Rainey. They are both Lake Mills natives, and we're excited to have the opportunity to present a proposal for the beachfront restaurant on Sandy Beach. Our current operation is a large event space, bar, and restaurant in Madison, in a historically renovated feed mill. But between the 3 of us, we have dozens of years of hospitality experience in restaurants, bars, and event spaces, a little hotel mixed in there as well. We will get right into the details of our proposal. The vision that we're proposing is a beachy, family-friendly supper club that is approximately 4,000 to 4,500 square feet, 2,500 to 3,000 of which will be interior space. The 1,500 to 2,000 remaining area will be patio and rooftop deck. We feel as though, unsurprisingly, the outdoor area is very important to the facility. The indoor dining will feature a flex space to accommodate busy dinners, craft markets, live music, and more. I will elaborate a little bit on that. Currently, we have a similar setup in one of our smaller event spaces where it's a large 85-person space, but then we have a smaller area that is segmented with a large barn door. So the door just half the wall is wall, the other half of the wall is door. So the door just completely moves to go in front of the actual wall, and that space then extends the the 85-person space to make it a little bit bigger. We feel a space like this not only lends itself to community events like markets or live music performances, but also on a busy fish fry Friday, instead of having a wait for a table, you just open up that door and have extra dining space without having a dining room feel huge and empty, let's say on a Wednesday in January. So, as I mentioned, there will be significant outdoor space, a wraparound patio, as well as a rooftop deck. And then the walls of the dining room will be glass or either accordion style or garage style, so that they could open up and the interior space actually becomes indoor-outdoor during the season when it is appropriate. On the wish list is definitely fire pits to extend the outdoor season. From our current experience, that was on our wish list for our current event space. We know that they could be expensive to put in, but given that we're getting in from groundbreaking in this case, we're not trying to retrofit for gas lines. We're hoping that perhaps it will be friendly to the budget. So hours of operation that we envision, our closed day would actually be Tuesdays. We find that many places are closed on Mondays, so we would actually aim to be closed a different day with lunch and dinner service all week. So weekdays we're looking at 11 to 9 p.m. and then Friday and Saturday we would have longer hours and be open until bar time, 2 a.m. With the full dinner menu still ending at 9 p.m. So it would go down to a limited menu until 11:30 and then snacks until bar close. Right now we hope to be open all year. That is our goal. Of course, if after a year or two we're bleeding money in February, we would reassess that. But it is the goal to have programs and things like fish fries, Saturday night prime rib, dart leagues, pool leagues, other activity, live music, other things happening in the space in the winter months so that it is still an attraction, even if the beach isn't available. So that would be the goal. How that works out is, of course, up to the community. So it is always possible we would reduce hours in the winter, but never completely close. I can't imagine we would ever lose those Friday, Saturdays. I've mentioned Friday fish fries. Prime rib Saturdays, we would also be offering a concession window, as well as indoor and outdoor, both counter and table service. So we actually envision the bar area and tables around the bar having a more counter service vibe where you would go up, place an order, get a buzzer, and be able to collect your food when it's ready. And then a little bit of a more formal dining room area where you would sit down and have a waitress come over to take your order based on your preferences. And then, of course, the people who don't want to come inside at all could go up to the concession window. So to really have all those options, because we feel like the area sees such a wide array as far as the type of customer who would use the facility. Then we have some visuals here, outdoor dining. I think partially what we really wanted to present here is semi-permanent shade cover. So not necessarily building a roof or an overhang, but shade structures that we could control. Maybe it is permanently affixed to the building, but it rolls in and out. That's a little bit more of an expensive option. Or we use kind of the sun sail shades at our current patio, and they work really well. We take them down in the winter, we put them up in the summer. It then also allows you to kind of adjust based on how the sun and the trees are really creating the sunny spots on the patio. The interior, definitely has this wood metal vibe due to water and sand. So we want to be conscious of where we're located and make sure our surfaces are considering that as well, with, you know, this kind of eclectic beachy vibe, with formal tables for dining though. So, you know, we're not leaning to dive bar here. We definitely want it to be a nice environment that you feel like you'd like to go out to on a Saturday night, but still approachable for someone in their bathing suit during lunch on that Saturday day. As I mentioned, activating the space is a huge part of our business plan. We are in the event business, and I think that experience comes over to a venue like this with knowledge and experience in activating the space. So we are, you know, not necessarily talking about private events here. We're talking about bringing in activities for the public and the community to participate in, and giving people a reason to come there, and make it a destination for Lake Mills and surrounding areas, hopefully. So the lease structure that we have proposed is a 5% base rent of the final build-out cost, with the knowledge that a profit share of some kind would absolutely be introduced. What exactly that looks like, I think, is a conversation that needs to be had with the city. We are open to that, but we also want to be realistic about, you know, how much we will be bringing in the initial years, and setting the business up for success, because it is going to be a keystone in this redevelopment of the waterfront. So, of course, we want it to be successful, and we want to be realistic about what that means. The restaurant industry has a low profit margin, and, you know, a seasonal location could make that tricky. We obviously have ideas on how to overcome those seasonal challenges, but we, again, want to be realistic about what that means. I did send out a kind of 3-column projected budget earlier today. I don't know if it made it to you. Is it? Okay, good. But I'd be happy to take questions on that or look at that more thoroughly with you, if desired. So I think we could go to questions now.
Thank you, Bethany. Appreciate the overview, and I think we did get the budget posted to our agenda earlier today, so I'm not sure if all the council members have had a chance to look at it,
Sure.
but that might be something that we might have some questions on. Does anyone have any questions for the group? Mr. Fields?
I think in the proposal, you said you were looking for one boat slip also?
Yes, the boat slip, yeah. So we do envision a pontoon boat rental as what budgetarily ended up to be a more significant part of the project than I had originally envisioned. So having a boat slip as part of it would definitely enhance our offerings. We, you know, not only envision a just rent by the hour pontoon rental, but the ability to add on a cooler of sandwiches or meat and cheese boards and snacks, so that you could kind of have the whole lake food experience, and kind of offer, you know, even sunset tours with wine type of thing. Yeah, so a boat slip is definitely on the wish list as well.
Okay, thank you.
I have a follow-up to that. When you said something about that turned out to be a bigger financial part. What did you mean by that?
Oh, so you're able to make a lot of money off of boat rental.
Oh, okay. So it adds
to put it quite
to the
quite
financial
blatantly.
desirability
Yeah, so
for you. Okay,
yeah,
got it.
financial viability.
Okay.
That boat piece actually plays in pretty significantly.
Okay, and then you also had in your proposal a request to use what we call the bait shop, the old bait shop?
Yes.
For kayak rental as well?
But kayak rentals, we also, after meeting with city staff, talked a lot about ice skate rentals as well. So to have kind of that dual season.
And as snacks.
Oh, yeah, and as potential snacks, a quick stop right there by the water.
Okay, thank you. Mrs. Bishop, any questions?
Yeah, I've been thinking, I think I do have some. So, you're proposing an initial build out by the city of between 1 million and 1.5 million, but I don't see any proposed construction budget or materials costs. Also, in terms of financing, I don't see any sources and uses or even proposed financing for you guys just for the FF&E. So can you talk a little bit more about your proposed financing for your portion, and then what our construction budget would look like on the city side from your perspective?
Yeah, thanks, Catherine, for that question. I mean, a lot of that would be going through city bids. So, we wouldn't own the building. We would lease the building from the city. So that would all be on the city to build, and we would be leasing the space. There would be a lot of hard costs associated with this restaurant endeavor, so far as equipment inside that we would be privately financing. But we are walking into this looking at we're leasing a building on city property and not owning it.
Any follow-up, Mrs. Bishop?
Do you have a budget for your FF&E and what it would look like to finance that for you guys?
Yeah, we'd anticipate around $1 million in FF&E. We would be pursuing primarily private investors. We have a short list, but I don't know that I'm going to share that here. And we've also had discussions with a couple different banks about SBA loans for other projects that were then not needed, but that is also an avenue that we would potentially pursue.
Okay, and is there a separate entity that would take out the financing versus the entity that would be leasing the government building, or do you intend to bundle that in the same corporate structure?
It would likely be the same corporate structure.
Okay, and I understand there may be a financing document sent to us separately. I have not reviewed that yet. Are any of you putting any of your own, excuse me, I have an associate here. Are any of you three putting your own personal funds in?
I will not be putting my own personal funds into this project.
Same, this will all be funded privately through investors.
Same here.
Okay, any other questions? No. I have a couple. You talked about some of the event business opportunities, and I guess the dining as well. What do you envision in the size space would be the capacity for dining or for events?
Yeah, so we would be looking at about 80 to 100 seats for dining, and about the same capacity for events. So 100 to, depending on whether a private event would be seated, would decrease capacity a little bit. But you theoretically could have a reception-style event for 150. For, a market-style event, you're probably looking at about 12 to 15 vendors, depending on booth size.
And seasonal.
And, in season. So that's part of the doors being able to open up to the patio. You could open up the doors, and then a market would extend outside onto the patio.
Thank you. Oh, sorry, were you going to say something else, Dan?
No.
Oh, okay. And then on the rooftop Is that, so you gave us some kind of approximate square footage, 25 to 3,000?
Yeah, so the rooftop
Or
would
1,500 to 2,000, is that, the rooftop is part of the
Yeah, the
outdoor?
rooftop would probably be the smaller outdoor at about 500 square feet. And then the more significant outdoor space would be the ground level patios.
Okay, so, and again, some of this is maybe a little bit just sort of like what you would envision, but are you thinking the rooftop is open air with railings, or it would be covered but more of like a shelter?
Open air with railings.
Mostly just to give people the opportunity to have a nice view of the sunset and the lake and all that.
Sure,
Yep.
sure, take a beverage up there, whatever, sure. Okay,
Ms. Curler?
yes, Ms. Cueto.
Do you have a vision for what this building looks like? Because I believe that we were asking for a vision of what the building would look like. What I know that you gave square footage, and how is it going to impact the beach? So,
Sure. Honestly, we will to some extent rely on the expertise of architects. So none of us are architects. We could, and I think cost consideration is of utmost importance to us as well as sustainable materials. So we definitely prefer a more organic look, if you will, something that is heavy on wood, that's going to blend in with the surroundings. I would not envision a more industrial type building, but definitely, beachy. So that's, the basic answer, but we really would want to rely on both the expertise of architects, but also, city or community feedback, city staff input. I don't know that any of us are so tied to this is how it has to look. I think that is somewhere that we're open. It is going to be a city building, right? So if we leave after 10 years, you all still have the building. So I think that we have actually tried to not get too tied to a specific aesthetic or vision for the building, and are more focused on the needs of what it takes to operate a successful restaurant, such as certain square footage, lots of outdoor space.
sure.
Yeah, I'll comment on that too. The first time we together sat down and thought about even putting something together, we met on a Saturday morning and sat at a picnic table on the beach next to where the old restaurant used to be, and we sat there and looked at trees, and I said, well, trees are a big topic right now in Lake Mills, so how do we, envision this with the space given, and, in the proposal, it's extremely vague as to what the actual footprint of the space could be or should be, so, we left that kind of open to interpretation as far as if this moves forward, as we move forward, how do we make the best space that works best for us and also works best for the city and works best for the space available, so.
Thank you.
Yep.
Any other questions? I guess I have one more again. I think we're all trying to envision what this building might look like.
Sure.
And you've described some of your needs and goals and how that would work together. So when we think about the square footage, and you talk about the indoor and outdoor, would it be fair to say that those square footages are the areas where customers would be using? And would there also be some additional square footage that would be needed for the kitchen, for storage, for the back areas?
So
to
that
speak?
square footage includes all back areas.
Okay. So what would be the footprint, if you had to guess? How much length by width of the building on the landscape?
Probably, I always think of things in rectangles, and I kind of envision like a 60 by 90 was kind of my initial 60-foot by 90-foot
Okay.
space, with the 90 being as much along the lake shore as possible to engage people on looking straight at a beach.
Okay. Any other questions for the Zozo's Beach Club?
I have a couple more,
presenters?
Ms. Curley.
Yes, go ahead, Mrs. Bishop.
And Hannah has one too. No, I'm just kidding. I have
We
questions
can't
about-
actually see her, so.
well, that's on purpose.
Oh.
As adorable as she is. So I have questions about your current establishment, and I'm just hoping to figure out a little bit more about how you currently run your operations. Are you currently fully staffed with the location you have in Madison?
We are, with
Okay.
much work.
Yeah, and so can you, with that in mind, there are new companies that have moved here to Lake Mills that are still trying to hire people. There are a lot of food service places, maybe not in Lake Mills, but in surrounding areas that are struggling to have full-time staff. How do you guys plan to mitigate those challenges in our current environment to fully staff this new restaurant as you've described in your proposal?
Yeah, that's a great question, because it is certainly a challenge plaguing the food industry. This is actually a piece of this operation where seasonality actually plays to our favor. In that, so in our current business, we currently run a business that is seasonal. The bulk of our business happens between April and October, as that is event season. So we rely pretty heavily on high school and college student staffing. We envision a similar situation here where we are able to staff up for the busy season with students who are home from college and off of school for the summer for high school. So that has actually been the easiest time to staff when you have the availability of that workforce. Obviously, we would require staff all year. One thing that we found with our current business is being competitive in what you are able to offer hospitality workers. That often means benefits and bonuses. Anybody who was able to take a peek at my projected financial scenarios, you will see a bold note on that staffing line that says no insurance is currently included in that number. So that is certainly something that we would be working toward, like a profit surplus. That is like number one priority where that profit surplus would go. Hospitality workers are just so rarely offered benefits that if you are a company who is doing that in this industry, you retain your workers, which is really reducing the turnover is really the challenge in the industry. So that is how we would hope to keep our staff all year, is the people who are working for us all year long would be the full-time staff. They would have the full-time hours, they would get the benefits, bonuses, and paid vacation that would allow this to actually be a career for them, not just some job they leave after 6 months when they're bored. Or a more enticing opportunity comes along. So, and then, when we're really busy, we would be reliant upon that seasonal staff.
Thank you for addressing that.
Okay, any other questions? All right, thank you very much for being here tonight.
Thank
Appreciate
you.
your presentation.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, so the next item on our agenda is a discussion decision on awarding the Sandy Beach Restaurant request for proposal to Garver Events LLC. Garver Events LLC. So we don't have a prepared motion here. I think maybe discussion would be in order and then kind of go from there. Drake, is there anything that you want to share with us first?
No, I just would, I would just kind of view this, if the council moved forward with award, it would kind of be the closure of this RFP process, authorizing staff to enter into conversations with Garver Events to hammer out some additional details, come up with a timeline, and start to kind of formalize what this process would look like, see if we can come up with a contract that staff and Garver Events would be comfortable presenting to the city council. We'll have to go through, so there's a lot of steps left in this process. We'll have to go through an RFP process to find an architect to design the building. We'll have to get back cost estimates. We need to go to referendum to the community, and then ultimately we'll need to bid and construct. So we still have a number of steps along this way. So this would just be the closure of one step, which is that we did an RFP process for this. We got, the applicant that we have before us, and if it's to the city council's, you think it meets your, high level overall goals of what you were looking for, that then staff will start taking the next steps to figure out those details and see if we can come up with something for the council to formally adopt and execute with the applicant.
Okay, Ms. Quidnow.
I'm encouraged by the fact that there are 2 out of the 3 of them are from here. I think that being from Lake Mills and knowing what the community wants and having an insight that's organic is something that we were looking for anyway. And I've had an opportunity to take a look at their other location, and it's very classy, which is something that we were also looking for in terms of what we were expecting out of that location. It is a little scary, honestly, the investment of being in charge of a building, but we are the city, and we run buildings. We have buildings all around. Is it a restaurant? No. We have like this building. It doesn't have restaurant capacity or capabilities, but I'm still going to go back to the fact that, having the 2 out of the 3 of them who live here in Lake Mills, they're going to know what this community wants just as much as we do. And I think that they'll be more invested in the time and what it takes in order to make it work. So longer term is what I'm gathering, and I think that's something that we really kind of need.
Thank you. Any other thoughts?
I do, Ms. Curler.
Yeah,
unless
please
Mr.
go ahead.
So my initial concern is, we have some pictures of what a building might look like, but we have no specs, no architect renderings, which sounds like the first step that now the city has to go out and do. Typically in a project like this, the developer or sponsor would be putting up due diligence costs and paying for all of the fees associated to even get this thing up off the ground. And I don't see anything like that from the people making this proposal. So that's a cause for concern that from the get-go, the city is taking on all of the risk before this thing even gets off the ground, before we even know if it's viable, and without having an end cost in mind.
And I appreciate that comment, and I wanted to address that as well. Mrs. Bishop, regarding what are the costs going to be to the city? So we don't really have we've got some, general square footages and idea, design concepts, but we don't really have even just a schematic of, like a diagram of what a building might look like, or some potential costs, and then what the city's financing would be. So assuming for the building and the infrastructure, associated infrastructure and so forth, I think we've been previously throwing the number 2 million around. If this applicant's proposing 50,000 a year, that without interest costs, that only covers half of the 2 million. So I think I'd like to have a better understanding of what our financing picture would look like, to understand, to Mrs. Bishop's point. So what is the financial risk that we would be going into, and making sure we understand that before we, start negotiating.
Are we going to get that kind of information at this point? Because it sounded to me like you were saying this is the start, and that we would get more information as we go.
Well, so in the RFP process, we we purposely left it open for, financing ideas. So I guess in this instance, the way it's been presented is that the city is acting as the developer in this situation, and that we will be the owners, the constructors. We will be building a site with the goal of having a restaurant operated out of it. And the proposal is that they will be outfitting the interior of it. They will be running the operations of it. There will be a lease agreement and then a potential revenue share to be their contribution towards the city's investment in providing a restaurant as a service to the public. So in this, based on how that's structured, I guess I'm not surprised that we don't have architectural renderings or things of that nature, that they haven't engaged with an architect, because for one, we will go through a process to select an architect to design a city-owned building. It'll be a city-driven process with input from who we are partnering with to operate this. You can sole source an architect if the city council so wanted and not go through an RFP process. So we could just, select one if we wanted, but when we're constructing it, that's a required competitive bid process. So, I guess I'm not surprised we don't have that information. That would entail significant investment. I think if the end user was going to own the building that was going to sit on city land, I would have expected something like that. So I guess I'm not surprised that we don't have that information right now. And what our financing would look like, what the city council will have to decide, and it'll be a conversation with the proposal, is there's going to be an amount. We don't know exactly what that is. We have a proposal from them that is going to come to the city through lease payments or revenue sharing. And that is going to add up to X. The city is going to build a building and is going to have principal and interest payments that are going to equal Y. Will the annual revenue we receive from the restaurant equal the principal and interest payment? We don't know right now. As you stated, the 5% of 1.5 million won't, right? That the 50,000 would not cover the principal and interest payment annually. Just simple math.
Assuming a 20-year loan, yeah.
So the city council will have to, it's a policy decision. Is the city willing to subsidize the provision of a restaurant service to the community at this location? That's a policy decision this council will have to grapple with. If that's how the negotiations come out. Maybe, there's another avenue there that I'm not thinking of right this moment. So that may be what the conversation becomes as we are looking at this process, is how badly does the city council want there to be a restaurant at this location? And is the city council willing to take on cost to achieve that may be above and beyond the revenue that we're bringing in?
Mr. Fields, you've been on the council longer than the rest of us in a lot of the discussions in the plans for Sandy Beach redevelopment. What thoughts do you have at this point in the process?
At this point, I'm looking at, I know this is a big item for the city residents, and the vast majority of people are definitely in favor of this. Mm-hmm. I think we need to move forward with this process so we can get to that point where we have the numbers and the financing and other ends, because it's not just going to be the restaurant itself. We're going to have to look at what it does to the value of everything around it, and are there other opportunities for us. So I think this is just step one to get to the information that you're looking for. This is the first step. We need to start the negotiation, find out what the true costs are going to be, so we can put that package together to make a good decision on that. Right now, what we're talking about right here is speculation. We don't have numbers. We need to take the next step to get real numbers.
It sounds to me like there's going to be a lot of conversations from this point that perhaps will answer the questions that have been brought up, and those are questions that we can answer. However, we are going to answer them through policy. So we still have a stake in this. We still have a lot of power in this situation, though we are making we're taking on the risk if we decide to go with it. I think knowing that we're going to be making decisions along the way is kind of giving me a feeling of security.
And just doing quick numbers, looking at square footage and estimated costs, you're right in the ballpark for what construction costs are running right now.
As far as the 1.5 million or 2 million or, okay.
Yep, it's right in the ballpark. So, I mean, until you put pen to paper right now and getting into the details, from a high level, it looks right.
Drake, is it, let me step back. I really like this proposal. I didn't say that earlier, but I mean, personally, I really like this proposal. I think it has a lot to offer, and it meets a lot of the things that our community is interested in. I mean, there's a few things that I don't think that we had contemplated in the RFP, like the pontoon boat and the kayak rental. So, because we've been focusing on this restaurant idea. So I really like a lot of the things that your group is bringing to the table and proposing. I guess I'm feeling hesitant only in that I don't want to lead anybody on if we, make an award tonight and authorize some negotiations, and then 2 months down the road, we say, whoa, this is going to cost too much or too much risk to the city, never mind. I'm not saying it would play out quite that way, but I guess I'm just wondering, Drake, if there's any way for us to get a little bit better handle on either an estimated building cost or, financing for the city that would give us a better feel for what we're getting into. Or would we not be able to get that until we really start negotiating?
Yeah, I can talk to our financial advisor and see if they have forecasts on what bonding would be. A GO bond might be in 2024. Ellers will have some ideas. We can certainly know what the market is showing right now for that, and that we could make an assumption on if it's a $2 million, build out, the high end of what the, conservative estimate on the high end on what that would look like, on what the city's principal and interest payments would look like over that 20-year period. We can certainly do that. I don't know that we have anyone on staff that can, we have engineers that can tell you what they're seeing, like Mr. Fields has said, on what construction costs are looking like. We know that the current applicant is just basically asking us to build a building, and they're largely outfitting the building, so that removes some unknowns for us when we're looking at, we're just building something for them to make into what their vision is. So that removes some unknowns. Design costs, there's only 5 to 10% of project cost is usually a good estimate. So if it's a $2 million building, 5 to 10% of that for design. So there are costs the city will have to incur in order to prepare, to build a building. It's just what the council comfortable with what those numbers are, so we can try and put together some things. We won't have with 100% certainty what all these costs are going to entail. We will, yeah, so Attorney Drescher brings up a good point, is ideally we would have selected an architect through an RFP process. They would have gone through a design. We would have estimates of probable cost with that, and then that would be included in the referendum that would be put before the public, so that we would have as solid of numbers as we could without actually bidding the project.
So if we award the request for proposal this evening or next meeting, that would start that process of the city investing in some design and some building cost estimates, so that then we would have some clarity for a referendum?
Yeah, the council would still have to approve an RFP for the architectural services. We'd still have to get some details hammered out with the applicant so that we kind of have a stronger idea of what that relationship is going to look like between the city and the operator. So those would kind of be the next two steps, is we'd have that conversation with the applicant, try and nail down as many details as we can, start talking about what that contractual relationship looks like, and then begin drafting the RFP for the council to review for design services.
Ms. Curley?
Yes.
I feel very confident in starting this process because I think the city has waited long enough. And I think that this proposal fits a lot of the boxes that we were looking to check. And I think that because, yes, it's a huge investment. However, with the information that Drake is providing us, that there's actually going to be quite a bit more that we're going to need to discuss about this, I feel confident in saying, let's go for it.
Mr. Fields, any other comments?
I was going to say, all these different steps are going to be coming back in front of us for approval. So we're going to be able to watch the budget, what we predicted, and the stars all got to line up on this. We're always going to have control of the process.
Mrs. Bishop, any other thoughts?
Yes, a couple of things. If we move forward, I'd like to see some sort of cost share proposal between the city and the applicants to cover some of these preliminary costs, so that it's not all in vain if we don't end up moving forward. We haven't expended so much of our taxpayer dollars for something that wasn't going to happen. And then also, how do we start writing in some guarantees? So let's say, 1 or 2 years of construction. It doesn't sound like the applicants have all of their financing lined up from their third-party investors. So in 2 to 3 years, when they're ready to open and they have the fixtures and furnishings in place, how do we know they're actually going to be ready to do that? The funding is going to remain in place, and start to have some guarantees for that.
That was a key concern of mine as well in the presentation. I think there are agreements that can be put in place that are activated upon steps where guarantees are provided or there's penalties. I think that's the way to address that specific issue. And in the course of this proposal, I think that issue is there. In our initial meeting with the group, they have been responsive in certain concerns or certain issues that have already been brought up. And I'm confident that we can work with them on bringing forward a plan and getting to a point where design is capable. However, there are a ton of back-end issues that you're bringing up, exactly what we would need guarantees on how that is structured at this point. It certainly would be an agreement outside of the lease itself, but we'd need a development agreement, something that puts a burden on them to outfit in accordance with an established plan. And if that doesn't happen, there simply must be some form of penalty or some form of activation that gets us to where we need to be. The points you're bringing up right now on the second half of the project are very, very key.
And Ms. Curler, if I may, just my final question is to the city manager. If we vote yes today to move forward with additional conversation with the applicants, what are we obligating the city to, if anything, in costs currently? And are you sure that everything would come back to us for either an RFP or a cost analysis before we spend any funds?
I will certainly bring back any RFP to take the next step to go into a design services. As far as what we're obligating ourselves to, we haven't by awarding of the requested proposal to the Garver events. I guess my my intent behind that was that we're closing the RFP process and we're entering into conversations solely with Garver Events LLC, and we are not going to be seeking any other proposals. So we're basically saying, this is who we want to work with. We need to solidify some details yet. We need to figure out this timeline so that the city council knows what steps and when these are going to take place. That's a staff-driven process, so staff time is the investment that the council would be making at this point. I certainly would not go forward with expending any dollars on design, preliminary design, engaging with an architect, beyond maybe conversations in which there wouldn't be cost to the city, just to get an understanding from architects that we have a relationship with on what they're seeing out in the market, just so staff can get kind of a handle on it. So the RFP for architectural services would come back to the council. Any formal contractual relationship with the applicant would come back to the council for approval. Any language for a referendum will come back to this council for approval. Any bid documents, so each step of the way, we'll be bringing it back to the city council for review and approval to continue on. So each step where the council may be authorizing additional resources, obviously we'll need resources to design it. There's gonna be award of the RFPs will come back. Will come back to the city council. Signing of the contracts with architects will come back to the city council. So I'll make that commitment to this body that it's gonna come back to you in steps as we progress through it.
Thank you for that clarification. I would, just for the other council members, I would vote yes tonight on this matter, solely on the basis that Mr. Daly just described, to close the RFP process, to allow us time to hash out additional details with these applicants, to figure out if we can even negotiate something in the future. So that would be the only basis that I would vote yes tonight on this issue.
I think that'd be a proper motion.
Just before we close discussion, I guess I would also concur. I think it's sensible for us to close out the RFP so that there's no misunderstanding that we're still seeking, other applicants. Do still have this question mark about the pontoon boat and kayak rental proposal that was not contemplated in what we put out, and it sounds like the applicants, that's an important piece for them. So does the council need to weigh in tonight on whether we are agreeable in having that be an element of the proposal, or can that just be further discussion?
I don't think you need to weigh in on it tonight.
Okay.
I think the approval of what the operations are going to look like and what it's going to include will bear itself out. I have talked with Director Schreiner. We likely we don't have a boat slip available right now. We'd have to add some. So that would be an exploration we go through to make sure that we have the capability and what that entails. We have rough estimates on what a renovation of the bait shack would take. We have had conversations with the applicant, letting them know that we do currently enjoy a relationship for kayak rentals at the beach. That includes a revenue share capabilities. That's a year-to-year contract, so that a conversation would have to be had there on what that looks like and what that relationship looks like, and if what the city would prefer in that. So there are questions yet, but I don't think you have to take action approving any specific piece of their operations, because we are not yet. We want it to be all encompassing. What is this going to look like? What's the city's role? What's their role? What's this partnership look like?
Okay, thank you. Is there any other discussion or comments? All right, just for clarity of the record, I'll ask for a motion regarding awarding the Sandy Beach Restaurant RFP to Garver Events LLC.
I move to approve the award of Sandy Beach Restaurant request to Garver Events LLC.
Second?
What?
I would just suggest
That's it.
adding, for the purposes of negotiating for closing out the RFP and negotiating with the current applicant on details of the proposal.
So you would like me to change my motion?
I'd add it to the end of your motion.
Okay. I move to, just clarity. I move to approve the proposal of the award of Sandy Beach Restaurant request to Garver Events for the purposes of closing out the RFP process of the Sandy Beach area
And negotiating.
And
details
negotiating.
Of the proposal with the applicant.
and negotiating the proposal with the applicant.
I'll second.
Okay, motion by Ms. Quidnow, second by Mr. Fields. Is there any further discussion? Okay, if not, let's have a roll call, please, Misty.
Mrs. Bishop,
Aye.
Ms. Quidnow,
Aye.
Mr. Fields,
Aye.
Ms. Curler.
Aye.
Motion passes 4-0.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone, for being here this evening.
Thank you and good luck.
Okay, next item is letter D, Resolution 23-72, which is a conditional use permit. Misty, would you read that title for us, please?
City Council Resolution 23-72, conditional use permit, mini warehouse on personal storage, or personal storage, 730 Jefferson Street, parcel number 246-0713-1313-018.
Okay, is there a motion, please?
I move to approve Resolution 23-72, mini warehouses or personal storage, 730 Jefferson Street.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Field, seconded by Ms. Quidnow. And I see we have our zoning administrator here. Would you like to tell us about this project?
Absolutely. Good evening, council. Bringing a proposal to you guys, another pretty straightforward one. They are looking to do mini warehouse buildings in one of our general industrial district zonings. It is a requirement by our zoning to get a conditional use. It's kind of a unique parcel back there, and this seems to do a pretty good fit for what they want to do. 5 new buildings, and they're renovating the existing building that is currently a warehouse, mini warehouse use. There was a few recommendations that we had at the planning commission that they have provided us. We got a landscape plan that's been approved. We got building materials and renderings that have been approved. The fire chief had asked that we had a couple more egress driveways basically added to accommodate them getting equipment in there if they needed to fight a fire in there. So everything that we've asked for them, I guess the last recommendation on there is really to just complete the site per our city code. So that'll be during the process that we'll be out there making sure that they do as they say they're going to do. And there's a little bit of a process yet that, we have to issue the permits. They have to get an NOI, which is a notice of intent. That's an approval from the DNR. They're not really getting into any of the wetlands back there, but because they're covering a big enough area, anything over an acre needs to have a notice of intent, so the DNR will approve their stormwater. And then the state-approved plans, even though they're just storage buildings, because of the size of them, they still have to have an architect draw up their plans, sent to the state, and then they approve them at the state level for commercial buildings.
Okay, are there any questions for Troy? The project, I don't see the applicant here tonight.
Yeah, I don't think so.
I'll just add a couple thoughts. At the Plan Commission, we did have one neighbor in public comment who was in support. He indicated that property's been zoned for warehousing and feels that the city has a shortage of warehouse storage, so this is a good use for the property. There was unanimous recommendation for approval by the Plan Commission with the conditions that Troy mentioned. Mr. Waters corresponded with me before the meeting, and he had a question about an easement that connects to the bike trail spur. And I'm not clear if there's an easement. I didn't see that on the plans. But is that something you could address?
So the way I think Dwayne was just looking at it is there is the bike path, the Drumlin bike path that is slated to be in there, and I believe that is an easement that's not the city's, but it's DNR. So,
And where is that physically
you-
located
I
on the
think
property? Is
if
it
you
along
see the,
Jefferson or?
If you look at the memo,
survey or the memo, yeah.
a memo from the zoning administrator, page 3, you'll see that path that cuts through the back of that parcel.
So the parcel that they're building on is the triangular shaped parcel with a blue line
Oh,
around it.
okay.
And then just to the west of it, there's that thin strip that is the Drumlin Trail.
So it's actually a 60-foot right-of-way, DNR right-of-way.
And does that spur exist there? So there is a trail there?
There's an elevated mound, I'll say. There's not an actual trail cut through there as we speak, but there's definitely the base there to do that.
And so is that easement on the subject property or it's adjacent?
It's on this property.
It's on this property, okay. It looks
And
like
none
that
of their
would be in the
building-
wetlands area.
Right, none of their building or soil disturbing, what they're going to disturb is going to get anywhere near that or into that area. But it is on the west side of their property.
Okay, and Mr. Waters was wondering about landscaping buffers, but they really wouldn't be doing any landscaping work within the wetlands, right?
I guess that's.
They would be staying out of that area, I would assume. They wouldn't be doing any landscaping within the wetlands
Correct,
adjacent to
correct.
the trail,
So-
right? Because they'd be staying out of the wetland area.
Correct.
Ms. Curler?
Yes, Ms. Gwendolyn.
Troy, can you remind me, or Dwayne, I seem to recall, because I drive, I drive from CP to Jefferson to come here every single time that I come here, and I'm pretty certain, I know about the building on the corner, but I seem to be recalling, or maybe I'm not sure, there is a building on the upper, on Jefferson Street, just up away from that building. Is that something that is our property, or?
That's the next property to the west,
Yeah.
before
Oh,
the
is it really?
subdivision.
Okay, so I think I'm picturing this to be a lot bigger than what it is. So my apologies.
I think you're looking at a building that's on the west side of the old railroad right-of-way.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
And if I may, I'll clarify what I've looked at since in the meeting. The parcel shown in the packet shows that the parcel owns all of the property, including the old right-of-way of the railroad. There's a note on the survey that's, note number 1 says, easements, if any, are not shown on the face of the document. When you go into GIS, on the old right-of-way, there is a document number for DNR. And my belief is there's likely a DNR easement where the old right-of-way was. Again, as Troy was mentioning, the old railroad bed is raised above the wetland in some of those areas. So at a future time, and this plan, correct me if I'm wrong, Troy, does not extend into this area.
Correct, not all the way to the bed there, yep.
So if the trail was ever contemplated to be extended from where it ends now and extends to Jefferson, that would potentially be in that easement.
Okay, thank you. Are there any further questions or discussion on Resolution 23-72? Okay, hearing none, can we have a roll call on Resolution 23-72, which is a conditional use permit for 730 Jefferson Street?
Ms. Quidnow?
Aye.
Mr. Fields?
Aye.
Ms. Curler?
Aye.
Mrs. Bishop?
Aye.
Motion passes 4-0.
Okay, thank you. Next item is Ordinance 1256, the comprehensive plan. This is the second reading. Misty, would you read that title for us, please?
Ordinance 1256, an ordinance to adopt the City of Lake Mills Comprehensive Plan 2040, City of Lake Mills, Wisconsin.
Okay, thank you. I see in the ordinance, it's been updated to reflect the most recent Plan Commission approval since we sent it back to them a couple times, so it does reflect their motion, their Resolution 23-3. Is there any other discussion or comments that people have on the comprehensive plan tonight? Okay, if not, then we'll move to have the third reading at our next meeting, and then the vote. Thank you. So then, moving on to item F, that is Ordinance 1258 regarding Brookstone Drive parking, and this is our third reading tonight. Misty, could you read that title, please?
Ordinance 1258, amending City of Lake Mills Ordinance, Section 615-15, no parking zones, City of Lake Mills, Wisconsin.
Okay, thank you. That was the third reading. Is there a motion for Ordinance 1258?
I am going to move to amend the ordinance to, is
Okay, I
that
think
something-
first we need a
Oh,
motion of the original. Is that correct?
She could make a motion to approve the ordinance with
Oh,
said
okay.
amendment.
Go for it.
Thank you. And I'm trying to see here if it's not really in here, the way that it would help me make sure that this makes sense. Attorney Drescher, if you could help me, I wanted to omit the area that is the three parking spaces.
All right, what I would do is motion to amend to include no parking zone in the currently established 76-foot spot on the east side of Brookstone Drive. Amend that from parking available to no parking.
Okay. Then I will amend ordinance 1258 to say that there is no parking in the 76 feet from County V.
On the east side of
On the east
Brookstone
side.
Drive. I don't think you need to measure from County V or anything because it's the only area that allows parking under the currently drafted ordinance.
Okay. Then I shall say it as you did. On the east side of Brookstone Drive. So again, I'm amending ordinance 1258 to say that there is no parking on the east side of Brookstone Drive.
Okay, motion by Ms. Quidnow. Is there a second? I'll second that. Okay, discussion, please. Ms. Quidnow, would you like, go ahead, Mrs. Bishop.
Yeah, I think I was going to do the same thing you were, Ms. Curler. I was going to ask Ms. Quidnow if she could just give us some reasoning for this amendment and maybe her thought process.
Sure. So when you're driving toward County B, or otherwise Lake Street, and if you're coming from the Brookstone subdivision and driving out of it, the area in which we had originally designated 3 parking spaces is a rather tight fit. I asked Chief to go and talk to the property owner who is on that corner, and the reason why we had those 3 parking spaces was because of the fact that that there was very few parking spaces for that property owner. The property owner indicated that there wasn't really a need to provide those parking spaces, and that even when there was parking there during construction, what they found was that there was a lot of littering of their property because there's no tree line there, or no tree lawn, that whatever anyone does parking alongside there directly affects their property. So with what Chief has provided me, and Chief is here if he wants to clarify anything that I might be saying incorrectly, but I believe that since that property owner isn't seeing a direct need for those 3 parking spaces, and as someone who travels that road every single day in and out, and I saw that as a potential hazard for whomever might be parking there, I felt like it was okay to omit all parking on that side of Brookstone altogether.
I appreciate you doing that follow-up, and Chief Schroeder, I appreciate you talking with the property owner. It's good to know, exactly their thoughts on it. I've driven by there as well, and I noted that that one particular property on the east side of the road there has a 3-car garage and a fairly sizable parking area in front of their garage, and then a long driveway. So I kind of wondered to myself, are they going to have much of a need for off-street parking? And I'm also wondering, street parking, anyone certainly can park there, and would we have overflow parking from the apartments where then you get pedestrians crossing, and that's a busy area. So while I know that our streets department and police department, evaluated the original proposal and that it, was safe and, they could support that. I think it will be safer and less congested to not have the parking there.
There are quite a bit of families in that area, lots of children, and the less congestion we can have in that area, the better, I think.
I would add that staff does not have an objection to removal of the parking stalls in that location. Staff was attempting to recognize that there would be limited parking for that residence along Crestview Lane. It sounds like that isn't a concern. So from a police department and public works standpoint, there's no objection from staff to eliminating that area of parking.
Thank you very much for being mindful of that and trying to accommodate them. Is there any further discussion on Ordinance 1258 as amended?
Ms. Curler, I have 2 more questions.
Yes?
I may. So I did drive by there, and I thought I saw that there are actual no parking signs currently there, maybe even in the 78 feet that we're talking about. Is that correct, Ms. Quinna? Would you happen to know that, or do you know when those were added?
Well, they were added, and Chief's coming up to the microphone here, so he'll be able to give more clarity. But as when the no parking signs were added was when the construction of Summer Ridge was occurring, and there was constituent concern from the Brookstone area that it was very difficult to navigate around that curve with parking on both sides of Brookstone. And if I remember correctly, we asked for on the west side of Brookstone that there would be no parking up to a certain time because of course, a certain area because of safety concerns, and that from Crestview to the following block on the east side, that was the only location that construction workers could park for safety reasons. There was parking right in that area that was designated for the 78 feet. People were able to park there, which is what has led that property manager to be more on the side of not wanting parking there because of the abuse of their lawn and having things left there. Chief, did I get everything?
You did. Yeah.
Sweet.
I authorized the temporary no parking just because of the safety concerns and the traffic in the area at the time with all the construction vehicles, yes.
Okay, and my follow-up to that is also there's no markings for parking stalls currently, correct?
Correct.
It's just, okay, thank you.
In fact, the curb line there is not marked with any coloring whatsoever. But with this ordinance, would that then become colored, or how does that work?
We would sign it.
You just sign it? Okay. Would that sign interfere with the property or the property owner on the east side, the east side?
It'll be in our right of way.
Okay. I just didn't want to have them be responsible for maintenance of that area.
It'll be within city property. We would install the sign, remediate the area if there's any necessity to.
Okay.
Okay, any further questions or discussion? Okay, if not, then let's have a roll call on Ordinance 1258, which is amending the Brookstone Drive parking.
Mr. Fields?
Aye.
Ms. Curler?
Aye.
Mrs. Bishop?
Aye.
Ms. Quidnow?
Aye.
Motion passes 4-0.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chief.
Thanks, Chief Schroeder. Okay, next item, letter G, is Ordinance 1259, which is our 2024 general fund budget. This is the first reading tonight. Misty, would you read that title for us?
Ordinance 1259, 2024 General Government Budget and Tax Levy Ordinance.
Okay, we've had Mr. Daly introduced the budget to us a couple of meetings ago, and then we had a special work session to go over it, and so I think we're all fairly familiar with what's in it. So tonight is the first reading. Is there any discussion or questions that anybody wants to raise this evening? Okay, then we'll have the second reading at our next meeting. We'll move on to letter H, which is Ordinance 1260, which is the 2024 capital budget. Misty, would you read that title, please?
Ordinance 1260, 2024 Capital Budget.
Thank you. Again, tonight is the first reading. Any questions or comments or discussion tonight? Okay, then we'll carry that forward to our next meeting for a second reading. Next item on our agenda is number 9, recommendations for future agendas. So we will have our 2 budget items. We will have our third reading of our comprehensive plan. We will have hopefully some more applicants for the ad hoc committee. Mr. Daly, anything else that you're aware of?
Those are what I have on my list.
Okay. Anything from council members? Okay, the only other thing, I think we will be doing your annual performance review in closed session at our next meeting, which will lead to our next agenda tonight, which is we'll be going into closed session. So I'll just read the particulars for agenda item 10 this evening. We're going to be convening into closed session to discuss potential real estate acquisition and/or site development opportunities within the city of Lake Mills and the town of Aztalan Emergency Medical Services Intergovernmental Agreement pursuant to Wisconsin Statute Section 19.85 Sub 1E for the purpose of deliberating or negotiating the purchase of public properties, investing of public funds, or conducting other specified public business whenever competitive or bargaining reasons require a closed session, and to discuss the city manager review pursuant to Section 19.85 Sub 1C, considering employment, promotion, compensation, or performance evaluation data of any public employee over which the governmental body has jurisdiction or exercises responsibility. So is there a motion for us to go into closed session?
I move to go into closed session.
Second?
Motion by Ms. Quidnow, seconded by Mr. Fields. All in favor say aye.
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 Mrs. Bishop says aye, so that's a 4-0. So we'll be convening in the closed session. The recording, TV recording will be off. We will reconvene when we're finished with our business, but we won't be coming back on television. So thank you, everyone, and have a good evening.